In the last video of the series, we went over what IPAM is and some basic things about it. Now it's time to actually go and configure it. So in my environment, I have 2 domain controllers and 2 DHCP servers, and I added an IPAM server that we will configure now. Before we go into configuring IPAM, we first need to run this command on our DHCP servers. This is because when you install DHCP, it does not create some local groups that IPAM needs in order to access the DHCP service. So I will use PowerShell remoting to run this command on my 2 DHCP servers from the domain. And after this command runs, okay, it did. Now we can go on and also install and configure IPAM. And since it's Windows, first thing we need to do is actually install the IPAM role. Now with the role installed, we can go to Server Manager, and you see that now IPAM also appears in the roles list. If we click on it, then it takes us to the IPAM page. From here we will configure and also manage IPAM. And the first thing we need to do at first configuration is connect to the IPAM server, this one. Now we are connected, and it's nice that it gives you these 4 steps to start with IPAM at first. Next thing is provision the IPAM server. This means actually that we will configure the IPAM server settings. So click next, and here is the first choice that we have to make. We can either use the Windows internal database or a Microsoft SQL Server database. And I will choose the first option. You can also specify the folder where the database will be kept. The second choice we have to make is whether we want to provision the managed servers manually or automatically, meaning the settings to be accessed by IPAM can be either done by us manually or configured through group policy. And group policy is the easiest way, so I will choose this one. And we have to give a prefix that will be used in the name of the policies. And that's it. We can click apply, and after I think less than a minute, the provisioning will be complete. Okay. Now we can also configure the server discovery. This means that you have to specify at which level you want IPAM to discover servers. If you have a forest with multiple domains, you can choose either the forest or one specific domain. In our case, this is the only thing we have, so we can add it, click OK, and this is done. Now, before we continue and actually discover servers in our domain, we have one more thing to do. We have to actually create the group policies that will apply on the managed servers. Because if I show you now the group policy management, you will see that the only policies that we have are the 2 policies that are default when you create Active Directory. So then, using this command, we can create our policies, and we have to specify the domain, the prefix that we set earlier, the IPAM server, and force, so you don't get asked if you are okay with it or not. run the command, and it will take a couple of seconds. Now if we go back to the group policy management and refresh, you can see that not only we have 3 new policies, they are also linked directly to the domain. So they are already in place. If you have already a lot of servers and computers in your domain, you don't have to worry. These things will not apply to anything because they only apply to whatever is specified in the security filtering. Since nothing is here, right now they do nothing. As we add servers to be managed, they will be added here, and then a specific policy will apply to those servers. And speaking about servers to be managed, let's start our server discovery. So now a scheduled task has been started that will search our domain for DNS, domain controller, and DHCP servers. And after some time, the task will finish and you should have your servers ready to be managed. Just click on select or add servers to manage, and it takes you to your server inventory. Here is where you see all the servers that you manage or you could potentially manage. You see that the ones that we found have this exclamation mark, which means that they have not been configured. The manageability status is unspecified. To manage a specific server, just click on it, edit server. You can see that it found that it's a DC and a DNS server. Just go here and specify that you want it to be managed. And now you see that the server is managed, but it still shows up as blocked with this red sign. Now in the DC group policy, this server has been added, so the policy will apply to it, but you either have to wait for the group policy to apply, or better still, just do a GP update. And since I'm directly on DC01, let's update the group policy now. And let's go back to IPAM and just refresh server access status. This command will go and see if now the server is completely unblocked and fully manageable. Now we can refresh, and you see that the server now is okay. It's unblocked and managed. But we still have 3 servers to go, and I really do not want to go and set each one manually. So what we can do now is the following thing. We can use a couple of PowerShell commands to get the server inventory. So with this command, for example, we can get all the servers in our inventory, managed and unmanaged, as you can see here. With this command, we can get only the servers that have unspecified in the managed status, which should be the 3 servers that still remain. And with this in mind, we can take this command and then pipe the results to set IPAM server inventory and set the status to managed for them. So let's run it. Now the command has been ran. And if we go to IPAM and refresh, now you see that all 3 servers are managed but blocked. This means that we have to also update group policy for all these 3 servers. Let's do it through PowerShell. So we run this command on all our 3 servers, and we have to wait for it to finish on all of them. And it's done. Now if we go back to IPAM, the cool thing is that if you want to run something on only a couple of servers, you can just select these servers, right click, and run whatever you want to run only on them. So we will check if the manageability status has changed. And now you see that DCO2 is now managed, but unfortunately the DHCP 01 and 02 still appear to be blocked. And this is because of the following thing. Since we ran this command and created the groups that I talked about, these groups have the purpose that the IPAM server will be placed into them, so it has access to manage the DHCP. The problem is that since we added the IPAM server to these groups, we did not restart the DHCP service, so that it knows it has different management settings. So let's also run this command on our 2 DHCP servers. And now let's try on these 2 again, a refresh, and also this should now come up as completely manageable. And now everything is the way it should be. And now that we have our inventory ready, one thing I want to show you is that you can do some cool stuff. Now you can, for example, only get the DHCP servers in your environment, or you can only get the DNS servers in your environment, or yeah, so on. So you have an inventory of your servers ready to go. Let me now show you, since we are done with, let's say, with the configuration of IPAM, let's go through all these tabs and see what they do. The first screen, we saw it. Then there's this part that basically shows you your IPAM configuration, your IPAM server, the domain that you have it targeted to. You have a couple of stuff here. For example, you can see your group policies. You can see the scheduled tasks that IPAM uses to get all the data, and the scheduled tasks are also here. You can see security groups, and these are really groups that are on this server locally, and you can still use them, but I prefer to use the role-based access control, of course. But here you are, you also have standard groups like in the past. And communication settings is just specifies the way the IPAM server communicates with the clients. The server inventory is the server inventory. It has all your managed servers or unmanaged. It has a lot of properties for each server which you can view. And in the tasks are all the tasks that you could do in this context, which are not that many. You can either add a new server, export the current list, or retrieve server data. We will come back to this in a moment. In address space, we have a couple of tabs that are used for the address space management. In address blocks, you would configure your address blocks, but you also have a context change menu here, so you can go to ranges, to individual IP addresses, blocks or subnets. Here you would have a more granular way to view your objects. And in this view you would have a lot of settings or properties for each object that you view. In IP address inventory you can only see IP addresses, and this is also something similar to the first page where you see ranges, addresses and range groups. The next tab is only for the communication between IPAM and VMM. So you would get here all the IP settings that you got from VMM. In monitor and manage, you have the multi-management part of IPAM, in which you would see, for example, all your servers grouped by service. So you have your DNS servers, your DHCP servers. You could view each one at a time. And you could also view different things. In DHCP, for example, we have server properties. We could view scopes, we could view failover and different things. DHCP scopes is where you would view your scopes, and DNS zone monitoring is where you view your zones. And for the first time these are unknown, but you could reset the zone status in both cases. And if I would retrieve server data, they would appear normally. Let's retrieve now. So you see that now the two zones are okay. You could also view your reverse lookup zones. And like always in this part, you have your properties for the zones. And server groups is just a grouping of servers similar to the first context. Event catalog contains different types of events which you can navigate through here. So we have IPAM configuration events that deal with all the IPAM stuff, like IPAM management. And we also have DHCP configuration events, which are events about different DHCP infrastructure changes. Then we have the interesting thing where you get events about IP address tracking. You can track an address from DHCP by the address, by the MAC address of the client, by the host name, and also you could search for user logons. The last thing is access control. And here you see all the predefined roles that IPAM gives you for access control. As far as scopes go, you only have global, and all IPAM objects are part of the global scope. And there are no policies defined when you install IPAM. So now let's start and do a couple of stuff in IPAM. The first thing that I would like to do is the following. When we configured IPAM, we went through step 5 but never went through step 6. And step 6 will go and retrieve data from all of our managed servers. So let's retrieve everything from the servers that we manage. And now check it out. If we go to IP address blocks and want to see the ranges, voila, our range has been imported in IPAM, and the reason you see two of them is because we have a failover relationship, and you can see this here. So this is the same range but imported from our two DHCP servers. Unfortunately, IPAM does not have a way to show you the range only once. No IP addresses are imported, only the range. But you see that we have no address blocks. Address blocks are not automatically found or imported, you have to create these yourselves. So let's create a new block. In our case, the network ID will be 192.168.10.0. The prefix length is 24. The start address and end address are correct. And when I create different objects, one thing I also like to set is the assigned date. So now we have our block. And we can see that because we have a DHCP range that corresponds to this block's start and end address, you already have a couple of addresses given out. Keep in mind that these addresses are not actually used, but since we have them given out to a specific range, the block shows us that they are assigned. The problem is that besides the DHCP range, we also have two ranges that do not appear here. The one before the address 100 and the one after address 150. So let's create a new range. And the network ID is the same as for the block. The prefix length is 24. Subnet mask is correct. Just that now in the start and end IP addresses, we have to say from 1 till 99, because our DHCP scope starts at 100. Managed by service is correct that it's IPAM, because it's not DHCP, for example, or VMM. Service instance, we can leave it as localhost or create another one. Let's also give it an assignment date. And usually this is all I configure. I don't set any other things, but you see that you could set custom properties for this range or DNS servers and so on. For me, this is enough. And now that we created our first range, I want to show you also we would be able to create the block through PowerShell using this command. And we can also create ranges through PowerShell using add IPAM range. We just specify the network ID, the start and end IP address for the range, manage service, service instance, assignment type, and assignment date. Let's create it, and now let's refresh. And here you go, 2 more ranges created. If we go back now to the block, we see that we have consumed all of it, so we did not waste any address from this block. Everything is encapsulated in a specific range. Now the next thing we could do is go and start populating the IP address inventory. So we could add a new IP address from here and specify the IP address that we want to add. In case we want to add a MAC address, it's okay. Since it's a static address, it will usually be managed by IPAM and the server instance will be localhost. In device type, you can specify different types of devices. I will add, for example, my router. So the address of my router is 192.168.10.254. In use, it's statically assigned. Assignment dates, I will say today. I don't want it to expire, so this will be permanent until I delete it manually from IPAM. You could give it different other stuff like description, owner, and such. In case you want to create a DHCP reservation, you could. In this case, this is not from a DHCP scope. You can create also a DNS record and since I don't have one, why not? I'll call it gateway 01. It will be in the test corp zone. I'll let DC1 configure it, and I'll also add a PTR record. And we will check this so it can create it. And this is mostly it. We can hit apply. And you'll see that everything that we wanted succeeded. Now we have our IPAM entry, and we should have it also in DNS. It's also in DNS. Another way to create IP addresses, of course, is using PowerShell. So you see here I specified the IP address, managed by IPAM, localhost is a service instance, device type is Microsoft servers, and I will add the DC01. Add it, should be also here. So we saw for now two ways of adding IP addresses, manually through the GUI or manually through PowerShell. But we could also import addresses from CSV files, for example. I have a CSV file in C. Let's open it. And I have the rest of my servers here. So let's see how we could import this file. And it's actually very simple. Import IPAM address. And we specify the CSV. Run the command. And now we have all of our used addresses imported in IPAM. One drawback of IPAM is that from DHCP it does not import the leases as IP addresses. You would have to add a new schedule task yourself to do this. I will not go over this in the video. But now if we go back to our ranges, you can see that they appear a little more used now. So it looks a little better. We see that we have 5 utilized addresses from 99 in one range and 1 from 104 in another range. Let's move on to monitoring and management. And you see here, for example, we have our 2 DHCP servers. We have a lot of properties for these servers already. We could do different management tasks like edit server properties, options, configure different DHCP scopes and stuff, or the basic MMC. But the cool thing is, if we wanted to do something on both servers at the same time, we could select both of them, go to edit and edit different stuff, and it would go and make this setting on both servers. If we want to see something else, like failover relationships, for example, we can select it. Now we see the relationship that we have and details about it. We can manage it, of course, like edit the relationship, for example, and so on. DNS servers are also here, and we could manage them. Unfortunately, there's not too much to do as far as DNS goes, but they are here and they are monitored. In DHCP scopes, you see the 2 scopes, actually one, but twice. In DNS zone monitoring, we saw already, you can see your zones. And in server groups, it's kind of the same thing, you see your servers. And what I forgot, in DHCP scopes, you could also see the reservations that you have, or create new reservations if you wanted to. So this was a quick look at installing and configuring IPAM. Of course, you could do a lot of stuff with it, more than I showed here, but I hope this is a good starting point for you. If you liked the video, then I would appreciate a like and a share. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.